The man in the mirror was a stranger. Not always, of course. Most days, Leo saw exactly who he expected to see: a reliable IT manager, a patient husband, a good guy. But sometimes, in the exhausted silence after a long day, another face seemed to flicker beneath the surface. It was in the flash of pure, unadulterated rage when a driver cut him off. It was in the sharp, acidic twist of jealousy when a colleague got the promotion he wanted. It was in the cold, calculating thought that would whisper a selfish solution to a problem, a thought he would immediately shove down with a wave of guilt. He called it the intruder. This was the part of him that didn't fit the narrative of his life. He was the peacemaker, the one who absorbed frustration and returned calm. But the intruder was a saboteur. It would leak out as a sarcastic comment to his wife, Sarah, that would hang in the air for hours. It would manifest as a week of lethargy and unexplained headaches just as he was about to finalize a major project. He was spending so much energy building a dam, and he could feel the pressure building behind it. The breaking point was the meeting. He had spent months developing a new software architecture, a clean, elegant solution. Mark, a charismatic but shallow colleague, had taken Leo's core idea, slapped a flashy interface on it, and presented it to the directors as his own. Leo sat in the conference room, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt the heat rise in his face. The intruder was screaming, "Stand up! Call him out! Tell them it's yours!" Smash his smug smile. But Leo, the good guy, just sat there. He swallowed the rage. It tasted like bile. He forced a tight smile and nodded along. Later, his boss clapped him on the shoulder. "Great teamwork, Leo. You're such a steady hand." The praise felt like an insult. That night, he drank 2 glasses of whiskey too many and picked a fight with Sarah over something trivial. The dam was cracking. Desperate, he found himself in a dusty corner of the library, pulling out a book by Carl Jung. A quote seemed to leap off the page. "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." It felt like a punch to the gut. The intruder wasn't an intruder at all. It was a tenant. A disgruntled, ignored, and powerful tenant living in the basement of his own mind. Jung called it the shadow, the sum of all the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable, the repository of our repressed instincts, weaknesses, and desires. Leo had spent a lifetime trying to be only light, and in doing so, he had created a dense, black shadow that was now pulling all the strings from the darkness. His journey began not with a bang, but with a simple, terrifying decision: to stop fighting and start listening. His first task was shadow recognition. Jung wrote about projection, that we see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. Leo started a journal. He wrote down every person who irrationally irritated him. Mark, the thieving colleague. His judgment: arrogant, entitled, a glory hog. His friend Tom, who always needed to be the center of attention. His judgment: needy, insecure, a show-off. His own father, who was stubborn and dismissive of others' opinions. His judgment: controlling, rigid, incapable of listening. The pattern was as clear as it was embarrassing. The traits he despised in them were the very traits he violently repressed in himself. He was furious at Mark's arrogance because he wasn't allowed to own his own ambition and desire for recognition. He was annoyed by Tom's neediness because he had to be the strong, independent one who never asked for help. He was angry at his father's rigidity because he was terrified of his own latent desire for absolute control. This was the first, humbling stage of shadow work. He wasn't a virtuous victim of arrogant and needy people. He was surrounded by mirrors. The next stage was the most difficult: shadow dialogue. One evening, sitting in his home office, he closed his eyes and did the unthinkable. He invited the intruder to speak. In his mind's eye, he didn't see a monster. He saw a version of himself, but sharper, darker, more intense. He was leaning against a wall, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. "So," the Shadow Leo said, his voice a low rumble, "the good guy finally wants to talk. Tired of getting walked all over? I'm tired of you sabotaging my life." Leo thought back. "Sabotaging?" The Shadow laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "I'm the only one trying to save it. You let Mark steal your work. What did I want to do? I wanted to fight for you. You let Sarah's comments slide until you blow up over the dishes. What did I want? I wanted you to speak your truth in the moment, to set a boundary. You're a doormat, Leo, and I'm the part of you that wants to stand up." The words hit him with the force of truth. His shadow wasn't pure evil. It was his repressed strength, his anger that protected his boundaries, his ambition that drove him forward, his primal will to exist and be seen. He had mistaken its power for danger. Jung was right. The shadow was 90% pure gold, but it was buried in the mud of his own denial. This began the slow, arduous process of shadow integration. Integration didn't mean acting out every dark impulse. It meant acknowledging them, hearing their message, and then choosing a conscious response. It was about moving from being a puppet of his unconscious to being the conscious captain of his entire ship. When he felt the old, familiar surge of rage in traffic, he didn't just suppress it. He acknowledged it. "I am feeling furious right now. This feeling is a part of me. It is energy. What is it trying to tell me? It's telling me I feel powerless and disrespected." By naming it, he drained it of its autonomous power. The energy was still there, but it was no longer controlling him. He started small at work. In the next team meeting, when Mark tried to steamroll one of his suggestions, Leo felt the old urge to shrink. But instead, he felt the presence of a shadow, not as an enemy, but as an ally. It gave him a steady, firm voice. "I hear your point, Mark," Leo said, his voice calm, but leaving no room for interruption. "But my data suggests a different approach. Let me walk us through it." There was a stunned silence. Mark blinked. Leo's boss looked intrigued. No one argued. No one died. He had used the shadow's power, the power of assertion, without its destructive chaos. He had integrated a fragment. The real test came with Sarah. They were discussing vacation plans, and she was, as usual, pushing for a busy, social itinerary while he longed for quiet and nature. The old Leo would have capitulated, building a silent reservoir of resentment. The new Leo took a breath. "Sarah," he said, "I love your enthusiasm for seeing people. But for me, a real vacation means quiet and solitude. It's how I recharge. This trip needs to have a balance, or I'll come back more tired than I left." He expected a fight. He expected her to call him selfish, to get upset. Instead, she looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. "Okay," she said, her voice softer. I guess I never really knew that was so important to you. You always just go along with my plans." In that moment, he understood another profound Jungian truth. By hiding his shadow, he had never allowed his wife to love the real him. He had only let her love the persona, the good guy mask. His authenticity, born from integrating his selfish need for self-care, invited a deeper level of intimacy. Of course, integration had its consequences. Some people didn't like the new Leo. A few work acquaintances, who were used to his endless patience, found his new boundaries abrasive. He lost a friend who had primarily valued him as a free therapist. It was painful, but the pain was different now. It wasn't the sick, hollow pain of self-betrayal. It was the clean, sharp pain of growth, of shedding a skin that no longer fit. He was no longer a man haunted by a stranger in the mirror. The two faces, the good guy and the intruder, were slowly merging. He wasn't just light, and he wasn't just dark. He was complete. He was whole. He had bad thoughts and good intentions. He had dark impulses and a moral compass. He was complex, contradictory, and utterly, powerfully human. One evening, months later, he was working late on a project he was passionate about. It was his project, his vision. He was in a state of intense focus, his mind sharp, his will unwavering. He caught his reflection in the dark computer screen. The face he saw wasn't the gentle, placid, "Good guy." It was determined, intense, even a little fierce. It was the face of his ambition, his will to create. It was the face of the shadow, integrated. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid of it. He smiled. The man in the mirror smiled back. He was finally, truly, home.